Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
And you think there is sexual harassment in the United States, in the United States Congress in Hollywood. Wait till you hear what they're doing in Cuba. And, of course, Pocahontas. Can you believe this? I happen to love this. I am cracking up watching this. It is quintessential Trump. The only thing wrong with it is that it's allowing the media to cover it and not stay focused on Al Franken and John Conyers and all the other. But still, there's a reason for it. It's classic Trump. It's quintessential Trump. Media still hasn't figured it out. So I, once again, will explain. I will try, for I don't know how many umpteenth times I've done this, to explain Donald Trump to the drive-by media. I don't think they want to get it. I think they love this state of perpetual outrage in which they live, because I think they've convinced themselves that most of the rest of the country is in a constant state of personal outrage. And maybe they are, but not over the things the drive-bys are outraged about. The drive-bys are one of the primary reasons people are in a constant state of outrage. Anyway, it's great to have you here. The telephone number is 800-282-2882, and the email address, if you want to. I check subject lines. That's how because folks, I mean, not counting the spam, we get 10 to 12,000 emails during a show here. And it's just, it's impossible for anybody to read them all. So I randomly check subject lines. But I do check them. And that's lrushbo at eibnet.us. Okay. On the death anniversary of Fidel Castro, children in Cuba are forced to praise Fidel as every girl's boyfriend. The Cuban state publication Havana Tribune has published a video of young children reciting a poem in honor of the dead dictator Fidel Castro, thanking him for making us men and calling him every girl's boyfriend. Now, the Havana Tribune is based in Miami. Well, it's not. There's the outlet reporting on this is based in Miami. And it notes that the children in the video, and there is a video, I'm not going to bother you with it. I'll just tell you what the line is. The children in the video, mostly girls, do not appear to be older than 10 or 11. They are what's called young pioneers. Children whose high grades in school forced them into the Communist Party at an early age. They're advanced intellectually, supposedly, so that they can earlier in life grasp the concepts of communism sooner than their classmates. The video appears to have been published as a commemoration of Castro on the anniversary of his death. Although the event occurred back in October, we're just now hearing about it. Now, for the record, we know these things here at the EIB Network. The age of sexual consent in Cuba is 16. But Cuban girls can marry at age 14 with parental approval. You know, I think Epstein may want to build a home there. I mean, you never know. The children are reciting a poem called Song to Fidel by communist Cailda Oliver Labra. Now, as you know, the NFL has many players who are taking a knee during the singing of our national anthem. They find it offensive. They find America offensive, and they're very troubled by it. Well, here is how the poem that these young 10 and 11-year-old girls being forced to recite to Fidel Castro. Here are the closing lines. Thank you for being true. Thank you for making us men. Thank you for caring for the names that liberty has. Thank you for your dignity. Thank you for your loyal rifle, your pen and paper, and thank you for your manly groin. This is what young girls in Cuba are reciting On the death anniversary, children forced to praise Fidel Castro as every girl's boyfriend. Now, remember Cuba and Venezuela. These are places that American liberals idolize. These are places American liberals dream about. The locations of several utopias. I wonder what the feminists would say about this and how they would excuse it. By the way, I'm told Twitter is blowing up. I'll tell you, folks, some of this stuff is I'm just getting sick of it. There is apparently a children's book depicting a gay Santa in a biracial marriage, and now a gay nativity scene is being popularized called Gay-tivity, two Josephs kneeling over the baby Jesus. And there's an article in a feminist publication called Refinery 29 describing the scene. What if it wasn't Mary and Joseph who met their child that night, but instead Murray and Joseph? Or Marty and Joseph? Because after all, they say Jesus had two fathers. Remember Heather Has Two Mommies? The little kids' book that was being forced on kids about 15 years ago in the New York public school system. Now, Jesus had two fathers, of course, God and Joseph. And therefore, there's not a woman in this gay-tivity scene, and yet a feminist group is publicizing this. But this is the kind of rot that's permeating out there on social media that is further obscuring and blurring reality and tradition and it's just this never-ending quest for people who don't consider themselves to be normal to try to change that and be considered normal. And it is, as I say, it's blowing up Twitter, but I don't know how. I don't know if it's being massively supported or not. And I just wanted to alert you to the fact that it's there, and you might be, remember, the cutting edge here, and since it's early on, you might be seeing this or hearing about it later, and I wanted you to have some advance notice of it, because it's the kind of meme. Remember back in the era of homelessness, when it was a big major political football for the left, Mitch Snyder and the Creative Center for Creative Nonviolence in Washington, Martin Sheen, all these guys kicking homeless people off the sewer grates at night sleep to show solidarity. Back then, they imagined that Mary and Joseph were homeless. It was a way of romanticizing and promoting homelessness. Mary and Joseph were homeless. Why, they arrived and they had to stay in a manger, sleep on the hay. I mean, people wouldn't give them a hotel room, what have you. It was just absurd. And it is yet again another attack on aspects of Western civilization and decency that knows no bounds. So now the gay-tivity, which, by the way, you know, more and more American cities for a while there banned nativity scenes because it was forcing Christianity on non-believers. It was a violation of the First Amendment. You're forcing your religion on people. I guarantee you that no such objection would be made if your town decides to have a gay-tivity scene with Jesus in the cradle and two fathers. And if you object to that, you'll be the bigot. You object to that, you will be the racist, and whatever other name-calling gets into gear. Yesterday at the White House, some reporter, the White House briefing, asked what possible political advantage did Trump see in calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. Now, folks, I have to tell you, this is right out of my playbook. I absolutely love this. Here is Trump. He's honoring Native American code talkers, which were a very valuable group in terms of transmitting messages and decoding coded messages, transmitting them during times of armed conflict. And Trump had them to the White House to honor them. And I know how this happens. I know how Trump's brain works. You know, he's in the process of honoring these people. There's a script. He's learned it. It may even be on the teleprompter, but he decides to go off the script because something, a synapses fires in his brain. Something reminds him that the Democrats have a fake Indian among them named Elizabeth Warren. And so while these Indians are there, the code talkers, Trump decides to point out that, hey, you know, I like you guys. Now, we have one of you in the Senate. We have Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, and then all hell broke loose. Pocahontas, which happens to be a real name of a real Native American person, somehow has now become a racial slur. And Trump has continued his known bigoted ways. And this reporter said, what possible political advantage did Trump see in calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas? Well, we're seeing it right now. The drive-bys are collectively once again making fools of themselves, trying to claim the word Pocahontas itself is a racial slur, when it's not. And they also look stupid by not understanding or asking about what this really is about. We have a United States Senator, Elizabeth Warren, who made up her heritage in order to get a job at Harvard. She claims she is 132nd Cherokee, and the evidence for it is that her mother or grandmother or somebody had high cheekbones like the Indians did. Now, why isn't that the real outrage? Somebody lying about being something that they are not. All Trump is doing is pointing it out. And you can see this is not done. The left does not have their sacred cows attacked like this. And when it happens, they lose it. They go bananas. So what the reality is that a day after all of this nonsense, it is being driven home to many people that Elizabeth Warren lied about her heritage to gain status in the world of the academy, which is obsessed with identity politics. That's the political advantage. The political advantage is taking an event that happened that constitutes, once again, phony baloney, plastic banana, good time rock and rollerism by Democrats and making it widely publicly known. And this is what Trump does. He simply attacks their sacred cows. He pierces political correctness. He refuses to accept the lies and the phony constructs that they create in order to protect themselves. I explained this back in December of 2015, almost 2 years ago. I identified how Trump plays the media by provoking an outrage for various reasons. Let's go back and listen to about a minute and a half, and this sums it up well.
You were here long before any of us were here.
No. Audio
he is
soundbite.
Playing the media like a Stradivarius. And I'll tell you, folks, for all of you people who have complained and whined and moaned about the media over the years and how unfair they are to Republicans and how unfair that makes the whole process, and what are we going to do? You need to be studying Donald Trump. This latest quote-unquote outrage from Trump is a perfect example of how he plays the media, how he knows exactly what to do and how to do it to own their attention and airtime. He says things that he knows will drive them crazy. He says things over and over that he knows will drive them insane. And then when they go insane, he doubles down on it and drives them even crazier. He also knows that his audience is in on what he is doing. He knows that a lot of Americans agree to a certain extent with things that he says. He also knows he's the only one reaching those people. And then he sits back and watches, no doubt with a huge smile, the media cover what he says over and over and over and over again. Then they analyze it over and over and over, and they talk about it over and over and over again.
Which they are now doing. Now, a lot of people say, you think Trump is ever bothered by this? You think Trump's worried about what? No. That's the exact opposite. Trump knows what he did. He did it because he intended to do it. He wanted this reaction. He's not in the White House sitting around with his associates and his advisors thinking that they stepped in it or they made a mistake and trying to figure out a way out of it. They're getting a good laugh out of it. Trump isn't the problem here. Trump is not the guy who lied and made up something about himself that isn't true. in order to get a job at Harvard and then become elected to the United States Senate. Trump is not a phony. Trump is not unhappy with himself and thinks that he's deficient in some ways, like Elizabeth Warren obviously does, and has to make things up to make herself feel better about herself, to get attention or whatever. Here's how it then manifests itself. Here is Trump setting off a new round of faux outrage. This is yesterday, hosting an event honoring Navajo code talkers of World War II.
You were here long before any of us were here, although we have a representative in Congress who they say was here a long time ago. They call her Pocahontas. But you know what? I like you because you are special. You are special people. You are really incredible people.
So these guys are standing there. There's three of them there. They're standing there. They're receiving the honor. And here's Trump, and he goes off on it. You know what? You were here long before any of us, although we have a representative in Congress who was here a long time. They call her Pocahontas. Actually, it's Pocahontas. Because she's a fake Native American. Elizabeth Warren is. She's a phony Native American. Well, exactly as I told everybody how this works back in December 2015, the media circled the wagons and began outrage about a racial slur.
President Trump issued a racially charged insult.
The National Congress of American Indians called it a slur.
Racial slur. A racial slur. He is obsessed with this idea, this particular slur.
Using a racist slur. A racist slur. Mindfully using racist terms that is just disgusting.
If he's not a racist, and if those comments are not racist, then the term has no meaning at all.
He never misses an opportunity to pander to the certain section of his base that responds to these kinds of racial attacks.
It's offensive. I call him the Archie Bunker in chief.
I mean, what do you say? That's so not okay.
That's Brooke Baldwin. I mean, what do you say? That's so not okay. What's racist about it? Whatever it is, it isn't racist. You people in the drive-bys are going to have to dig deeper and come up with something less cliched and reflect. This isn't racist. I mean, there was an Indian woman named Pocahontas. The racism is owned by Elizabeth Warren. The identity politics is owned by Elizabeth Warren, by you people on the left. You are the ones totally consumed by race and identity politics. And then when you get caught after phoning things up, then all of a sudden, whoever caught you is the racist? Elizabeth Warren herself was so mad she was near tears, coming up. Don't go away. Nope. Got to break. Go to break.
The United States can.
I'll tell you, AP got their wigwams in a bunch here over this. The rest of the drive-bys fit to be tied over Trump's racism and sullying a sacred house, the White House, and sullying a sacred ceremony the way he did, mentioning Elizabeth Warren as Pocahontas. For as far as she's concerned, yesterday on MSNBC, she was asked to respond to Trump's racial slur.
It is deeply unfortunate that the President of the United States cannot even make it through a ceremony honoring these heroes without having to throw out a racial slur. Look, Donald Trump does this over and over, thinking somehow he's going to shut me up with it. It hadn't worked in the past. It is not going to work in the future.
He's not trying to shut you up, Pocahontas. That's the last thing he wants to do. He's trying to expose you. Like he's trying to expose all of the frauds in the Democrat Party and on the left. Not trying to shut you up. How are you? Welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh and the EIB Network. By the way, fireworks up on Capitol Hill. The president tweeted, and he's got a meeting up on Capitol Hill with Chuck and Nancy to talk about tax reform and coming together on a compromise. And before he left, he's on the way now, gigantic motorcade on the way to Capitol Hill. Before he left, the president tweeted, I don't see a deal to prevent a government shutdown in this whole thing. And one of the things the president's demanding is that they get this budget stuff done so that there are no more threats of government shutdowns, which become a typical Democrat trick. with every new budget resolution or, heck, any other piece of legislation that comes down the pike. And he's asked for language in the tax bill, another piece of legislation for language that would not permit or would prevent a government shutdown. He says he doesn't see it on his way up there, and therefore he doesn't see a deal in his view. And Chuck and Nancy decided to cancel a meeting with him. Given that the president doesn't see a deal between Democrats and the White House, we believe the best path forward is to continue negotiating with our Republican counterparts in Congress instead. Joint statement here from Chuck U. Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. Rather than going to the White House for a show meeting that won't result in an agreement, we have asked Leader McConnell and Speaker Ryan to meet this afternoon. Now, Trump raised the prospect of a potentially disastrous government shutdown, saying he could not envision a fiscal deal with Democrats to avoid federal closure. He said, meeting with Chuck and Nancy today about keeping government open and working. Problem is, they want illegal immigrants flooding into our country unchecked. They are weak on crime, and they want to substantially raise taxes. I don't see a deal. So once again, Trump is simply calling them out. He's simply calling them out in advance for what he knows they intend to do. He's calling them out honestly and straightforwardly on what their plans are and on who they are. To me, this is Donald Trump on a roll. This is not the kind of thing you would get from any other Republican president or otherwise. They just don't call the Democrats out on their phoniness or their hypocrisy, nor do they call Democrats out on their true agenda. And Trump is exactly right. They do want the country flooded with illegal immigrants and refugees. And the best illustration of why is the recent gubernatorial election in Virginia. Not only did a number of immigrants, illegal and so forth, enter the state in droves, and some of them probably voted, then you had the governor legalizing the vote for felons. So Trump simply calls them out. When they are not allowed to get away with their lying, their obfuscation, with their usual tactics, then they call a halt to it. And Trump is just identifying them. And folks, the attention on this now is occurring because Trump dared to relate Elizabeth Warren as Pocahontas in that meeting honoring the Navajo code talkers. And so now there's focused attention on what Trump is doing. This is not accidental. It's not happenstance. It's not Trump going off script. It's not Trump unprepared for the job. This is Trump, the politician. He's got some serious things he wants to get done. The Democrats are standing in the way, as they always do. The media never portrays the Democrats as the obstructionists they are. It's the other way around. So Trump makes something happen that focuses even more attention on him. And while that attention is focused on him, he launches a salvo, this one at Chuck and Nancy, about how they don't really want a deal. They don't want a deal avoiding government shutdown. They want illegal immigrants to be able to continue to flood the country. Not only is this accurate in terms of identifying them policy-wise, it's also, I think, part of the campaign coming up in 2018. The beauty of this is identifying the Democrats and the liberals as who they are. You know, yesterday I made an observation about Al Franken. And I said, it may not be bad that he hangs around. May not be bad that he stays in there. May not be bad that he doesn't resign. May not be a bad thing if Democrats don't force him to quit. Why? Like everything else that this program is about, it has consistently been about exposing liberals for who they are since it began 29 years ago. I mean, there are many things we try to do on this program each and every day. There are many objectives, many of them professional, broadcasting related. Others are political. Others are cultural. But if there was an overriding theme for sense of purpose to the program in a political sense, it would be to educate and inform people about who liberals are. And one of the best ways of doing this, so you've got Al Franken, you've got John Conyers, you have massive numbers of liberal Democrats, sympathizers, donors, now caught up in a massive anti-woman issue, sexual harassment, potential, possibly rape, certainly abuse. The vast majority of people who have been accused or involving in this is Democrats and leftists. And yet they claim we are conducting a war on women. They claim that we don't care about women's rights. They claim that we are anti-woman. Look at how they treat them. Look at how they treat women. Look at what they really do, not what they say. And so having this situation where everybody and their uncle is demanding that Roy Moore leave the Senate race, and if he wins, that he not be seated. At the same time, the Democrats are circling the wagons around two of their prominent elected officials and doing everything they can to keep them in office. And I think exposing that is a great step, a significant step in trying to inform people who may be apolitical, low-information voters exactly who the Democrats are and how phony they are. And one of the best ways to deal with them is to not believe them, is to be suspicious of them. They've got the media on their side. They get away and have gotten away with so much. The objective of this program is simply to expose the left for who they are and what it is. And having them circle the wagons and try to get away with the very things they try to run Republicans out of office for, to me, has the potential, not saying it's going to work, but it has the potential of being educational. It has the potential to be a teachable moment. This is, all, to me, it's all about elections, and it's all about a voting population that's as informed and educated as it can be. And I just believe there has been a very ineffective effort, even by conservatives and Republicans, to identify liberals and Democrats for who they are and what they stand for and what happens when they win, which is not much that's good. Well, it's the same thing here with all of this focus on Elizabeth Warren. And by the way, let me give you the truth of this story. A lot of people, in fact, Mediaite has a story today that says Elizabeth Warren's Native American controversy started with Harvard Law School. That's actually not true. People believe that Elizabeth Warren wanted to get a teaching gig at Harvard, and so Harvard aided her in discovering that she had 1/32nd Cherokee blood, making her a minority, which made it easier for Harvard to hire her. But this actually, Elizabeth Warren and her Cherokee heritage, this whole story began years before that. I have here in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers a story from the Boston Globe, May the 2nd, 2012. That's 5 years ago. An excerpt. She acknowledged that for years before she joined the faculty at Harvard, she had been classifying herself as a minority professor in a directory of the Association of American Law Schools. That directory included Elizabeth Warren on a list of minority professors from 1986 and 1995. On Wednesday, remember now, this is back in May of 2012. On Wednesday, Pocahontas told reporters that she listed herself as a minority professor to connect with others like her, people for whom Native American is part of their heritage and part of their hearts. There aren't a lot of people like me in law teaching, and so I just thought I might find some others. So Harvard Law School did not start this BS about Elizabeth Warren claiming she was 1/32nd Cherokee. She started it. This is a significant distinction because the general consensus is that Harvard started all of this because they wanted to hire her and that they found an opening by way of somehow discovering her Indian heritage. She started this. This whole thing has been her idea. She started it years before she got into Harvard by listing herself as a minority professor. And there hasn't been any evidence other than her citation of a female relative with high cheekbones. But even at that, folks, how cheap is this anyway? 132nd Cherokee, in order to be hired as a law professor at Harvard or other places, when she clearly is not, and then she gets called out on it, and somehow this is racist, somehow this is abusive on the part of Trump. And you see, it is. When you don't let the left get away with their schemes, when you poke holes in it, when you burst their bubble, they react like stuck pigs and come after you. And they start accusing you of the same cliches they accuse all of their opponents of, and at the top of the list is racist. So anyway, Trump does this, focuses even more attention on himself. He knows how to play the media like a Stradivarius. And in the midst of all this attention, then he gets to something that's really mattering to him, really important to him, and that's this tax bill and how Chuck and Nancy are trying to gum up the works, that they're the ones wanting the option of a government shutdown. They are the ones that want continued illegal immigration. This is what Trump is focusing on today. This is the message Trump is trying to enable people to see. And it all begins with him taking a shot at Pocahontas yesterday in the White House, and the media, clearly clueless, dutifully followed their script with their fake, phony outrage over Trump and causing all kinds of attention on Twitter, social media, and everywhere else to now the end game. Chuck and Nancy want the government to shut down. They want the option to shut it down, and they want continued illegal immigration. Just happens to be the issue Trump was elected on. It's a very dangerous thing to think you're smarter than Trump, and it's a very dangerous thing to act as though Trump's the big buffoon, not knowing what he's doing. Quick time out. We'll be back after this. Yeah. You mean the Consumer Financial Protection? That's just a money laundering scheme. You know, all that was a way for an independent agency to fine financial institutions and then give the money to left-wing causes like Planned Parenthood. It's nothing more than a money laundering scheme, but the question is not what they were doing or what they do, what they're designed. It's not the question for this bunch. Let me get to that in the next hour. On this Elizabeth Warren stuff, there's two things here. It's important. The story is that Harvard started all of this about Elizabeth Warren being 132nd Cherokee. They didn't. She did. She started this much earlier. And let me tell you why. Don't forget, political correctness is a disease that has consumed the entire left. Harvard, constantly under assault for not having enough minorities on the faculty. So here comes Elizabeth Warren. Hey, I'm 132nd Cherokee. And Harvard doesn't even stop to examine it. They welcome it and they hire her. And then they run and claim that they're engaging in diversity. They used Elizabeth Warren as an example to prove that they were not too white, that they indeed did hire minorities. So she claims she's 132nd Cherokee, and that allows other law schools to hire her or to get her to consult or whatever, because hiring a white woman that claims she's 132nd Cherokee in their world proves that they are diverse. All of this, folks, this is nothing but surface identity politics. It has nothing to do with competence. It has nothing to do with actual diversity. It's nothing to do with knowledge. This is simply the way the left operates. You know, she's 132nd Cherokee. She is 32 32nds leftists. You would think that'd be enough for Harvard. But no. Full-fledged liberal is not enough. They had to believe, they had to be told that she had some Indian blood, and just her assertion was enough. So it's a two-way street here, the law schools plus Harvard Law and Elizabeth Warren, and there's a conspire, if you will, a little bit of conspiracy in order for both parties to win on the basis of some phony made-up fact. Yeah, I'm 132nd Indian. Oh, wonderful, you're hired, and then we can say we're not too white. And she gets to say she has some minority blood, which makes her privileged. And they both use this to the max. And then when Trump comes along and busts their little balloon, why, since it was phony to begin with, they have a cow. Let me grab a phone call quickly. Judy, Lancaster, PA. Great to have you. What's happening?
Hi, Rush. It's an honor to talk to you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Big supporter of you and big supporter of Trump, but I'm a little confused with this whole Pocahontas thing.
Why?
Elizabeth Warren used it as it was a good thing to be have a Indian background. And I grew up that, I was taught that Pocahontas, she saved John Smith and she helped in Jamestown. And then later on, the Disney movie came out for little kids that Pocahontas was a good thing.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, the Democrats, this is a racial thing. So why isn't Disney racial? Why isn't Elizabeth Warren racial?
Because that's the only allegation they instinctively, reflexively make. Donald Trump blew up the lie that Harvard Law, the other law schools, and Elizabeth Warren have been putting forward that she's minority and they're diverse. And so that's a racist slur. It's not. You're right. Pocahontas is a heroine. There's no way calling somebody Pocahontas in the real world would be insulting. But to the Democrats, it is. That should tell you something. Stella McCartney has called for fashion sustainability. Fashion sustainability. What do you think that is? Well, hang on. That and much more coming right up. And I'll tell you something else. The fact that Pelosi and Schumer are refusing to go to the meeting with Trump, all Trump did, let me get the tweet again here. Meeting with Chuck and Nancy today about keeping government open and working. Problem is they want illegal immigrants flooding into our country unchecked. They're weak on crime, and they want to substantially raise taxes. I don't see a deal. So Chuck and Nancy get all in a Twitter here, and they cancel a meeting. And what does that do? That proves Trump is right. That proves that Trump is exposing their positions. I don't even know whether they get this, but by refusing to meet with Trump, they're confirming that he nailed it. If Trump was wrong about any of this, then Schumer could say, no, the president misunderstands. We look forward to meeting with him to tell him this is not our position. But no, not that. Old Chuck gets his little toupee up there in a wad, along with AP and their wigwams in a wad, and says, well, that just, you know what? We're not even going to waste time negotiating with the president. We're going to stick with negotiating with McConnell and Ryan. And right, because in Chuck's mind, he can roll them. I said in his mind he can roll it, but he can't roll Trump. So I'm telling you, all of this is happening with the added benefit that Trump has renewed focus on himself with that allusion to Pocahontas at the Navajo Code conference, the honorarium yesterday. See, people think that Trump goes off script. They think Trump's mind is undisciplined. And they think he's got his own racism and bigotry, so he's sitting there. Here's what they think. I'll tell you exactly what they think in the drive-by media. There's Trump at the White House, and they've got that picture, Andrew Jackson. Of course, they're focusing on that, too, because Andrew Jackson, responsible for the Trail of Tears. In fact, there's a state park where I grew up called Trail of Tears. We ended up calling it Trail of Lumps because that's where so many guys were told no on Friday nights in the front seat of the car. Really, it became Trail of Lumps. That's what we call it. It's a beautiful place. In a Trail of Tears State Park, you're going to look it up. But in Haskell, to us, it was Trail of Lumps because you went out there to park, and if nothing happened, then you got your lumps and you went home. And I don't care what they do to me. This is the point. You know, you've been saying that to me for 25. You know what they're going to do to you if you... Yes, I know exactly what they're going to do to me. They don't have any sense of trail of lumps. They're going to try to turn that into some sort of Native American slur, is what you mean, right? Well, no. It's trail it. Now, they're probably going to... You probably would dispatch a reporter to Cape Girardeau to find out, is Limbaugh telling the truth? Did you guys really call it trail of lumps? Look, I would love to take credit for having made up that name, but I didn't. That's just what it was called. Long before I became old enough to drive a car out there and give it a go. That's just what it was. Anyway, Trump's there. Don't distract me here. Trump's there in the White House. He's got the code talkers there underneath the photo of Andrew Jackson. You think that's accidental? It's not. They think Trump... They one of two things on that. They think Trump is either tone deaf or, man, does he really not like these guys? So then Trump makes the Pocahontas comment, and they think Trump is so undisciplined, or worse, that Trump is just mean. What's Elizabeth Warren got to do with any of this? What did she do to him? Why is Elizabeth Warren even in his mind right now? What an absolute buffoon. What they don't get is that Trump knows how to make them bend to his will. And that, when they figure that out, because they do now and then, that just infuriates them. So Trump, you can tell by the comment. I want you to listen to this. You tell me, we're going to go back in time if I can find it, audio soundbite, whatever number 1, 2, or 3 Trump in the actual reference to Pocahontas is. Mike, you've got the list there in front of you. Can you help me out here? Do you know what number I'm looking at? Yeah, go ahead. Here's Trump. Let's listen to this again. And you tell me if you think Trump is going off script here and does not intend to say this.
You were here long before any of us were here, although we have a representative in Congress who they say was here a long time ago. They call her Pocahontas. But you know what? I like you because you are special. You are special people. You are really incredible people.
Does that sound like somebody went off script? No. He meant to say all that because I'm telling you, he knows how to play these people like a Stradivarius. This is what... I think some of them might get it, and they resent it. Some of them don't get it. I'm talking about media people here. So Trump launches, and they follow the script. They dutifully get mad and outraged and start leaning into Trump as a racist and how bigoted and how uncouth and how unpresidential and how unnecessary, how uncalled for, how whatever. Then they go out and they ask the code talkers, did you find it strange that Trump started talking about Pocahontas when he's out there giving you the... Yeah, we did. We found it a little weird. Didn't think it mattered. Fine and dandy. Attention focuses on Trump. He wants the attention. It's like Snerdley just said to me, do you realize what they're going to do? As though I should be afraid of what they're going to do and maybe think next time twice about saying something. No, Trump knows exactly what they're going to do, and he invites it. So do I, but don't tell anybody. This is how I know Trump like the back of my hand, folks. I mean, it's eerie how well I know Trump and how I know why he's doing what he's doing. Anyway, focus his attention on himself. And now, what they don't get, I'm talking about the Democrats, Chuck and Nancy and the media, they view average American voters with certain degrees of contempt. They believe that voters are not capable of making up their own minds. They have to be either cajoled or persuaded by talk radio or Twitter or what have you. But and particularly Republican voters, they're not smart enough. This is what the media thinks. They're not sophisticated enough. They can't possibly understand how Washington works until the media tells them every day how Washington works. And, of course, when you're talking about Trump voters, it's the exact opposite. They are sophisticated. They know exactly why Washington works and how, and they don't want any more of it, and that's why Trump was elected. So the media will never understand what Trump has done here. Trump has just exposed Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and their position on this issue. And he did it by calling them out on that issue and their stance in his tweet. Meeting with Chuck and Nancy today about keeping government open and working. Problem is, they want illegal immigrants flooding into our country and unchecked. They're weak on crime. They want to substantially raise taxes. I don't see a deal. And what did Chuck Schumer do? He confirms what Trump says by canceling the meeting. Trump thereby exposes Chuck and Nancy, and Trump's voters catch it. They're watching. They notice it. They don't need me telling them what just happened here. They're sophisticated enough to get it. The media doesn't think the voters are realizing anything here. The media thinks that they're forcing people to question Trump's sanity. They think, the media believe they are succeeding in getting the people, particularly Trump voters, to question him, to doubt him, and to maybe think he's a little off his rocker with his Pocahontas stuff and maybe even a little racist. They are completely clueless. They do not understand what Trump has done here. They do not. This is key to understand, too. In their view, Trump is simply incapable of playing the long game. He's not smart enough. In their view, he's not capable of strategizing a move 2 and 3 days in advance. In other words, the way they think, Trump's not smart enough to call attention to himself with Pocahontas, for in truth, focusing attention on Chuck and Nancy and exposing them on an issue they're trying to slide by on. Trump's not capable of that. Remember, Trump is unsuited. Trump is a buffoon and barbaric and all these other things. Despite now coming up on 2.5 years of Trump outsmarting everybody, winning the presidency, continuing to defy every day the efforts of the drive-by media to destroy him and get him out of office. He's still there. U.S. consumer confidence has risen now to its highest level in 17 years. Home prices are on the rise. Unemployment is way down. Wages are up. The economic news is great. We're probably going to have fourth quarter economic growth in excess of 3% when this gets reported in January of next year. But the Democrats don't see any of that. They think because they won the governor's election in Virginia that it's over for Trump. And they think it's over for them, for Republicans, because of Roy Moore. They're circling the wagons to hold on to Al Franken and John Conyers while still trying to get Roy Moore forced out of the race or tossed out of the Senate if he wins. They are not giving enough weight to the fact that practically all of these sexual harassment perps are big-time liberal Democrat donors, fundraisers, bundlers. So I think Trump is continuing in his own way to run rings around these people. And the funny thing about it is that they see it the exact opposite. And some of the never-Trumpers do, too. The never-Trumpers think Trump is still a buffoon and an idiot and making a fool of himself. They look, why bring Pocahontas? What point does it possibly make? What purpose does it possibly serve? And we're watching the purpose it serves by watching the drive-by media reaction. The same thing is happening with this contretemps, if you will, over the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This is another little liberal enclave that was established by liberal Democrats, including Elizabeth Warren, that was set up as an agency that was unaccountable to anyone. It even had a budget that was unaccountable to the U.S. budget. Barney Frank and Chris Dodd set this thing up, and Elizabeth Warren was the real driver of this particular organization. the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I went through yesterday a number of descriptions of what it is and how it was set up, but let me just boil it down to the bare essence. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was an independent agency set up in violation of Article 2 of the United States Constitution, which allowed the Democrats to have oversight over the financial industry in America, lending institutions, banks, and you name it. And they were under the guise of protecting consumers. But that's not what this organization did. What this organization did was launder money. It was nothing more than a money laundering scheme. And it had another purpose. The fines that it levied for anti-consumer policies and anti-consumer behavior at these banks, what do you think they did with the money? The CFPB was a pass-through, and the fine money was given to Planned Parenthood, the National Organization for Women, or take your pick of any left-wing activist group. This was an independent agency set up to be able to legally get money from the financial industry and then turn around and give it to left-wing activist groups. And that's what they were doing with it. And that's why they are so desperate to hold on to it. The point is, it's unconstitutional. There is no, and that's the only thing that matters. You know, and the left is caught here. Because as the controversy has arisen over should it be Mick Mulvaney, Trump's guy that runs this, or should it remain Richard Cordray? He was the director. And the way this thing was set up, the director gets to name his successor. Congress cannot pass a law like this. That's unconstitutional. This thing wouldn't survive 5 minutes at the Supreme Court. The left knows it. Political pressure being brought to bear, and the way they're doing that is trying to discuss the importance of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and what it does and why it's necessary and what happened before it existed and the great things that have happened. None of that matters. Whatever it's doing doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is whether or not the Congress can establish an agency like this that is unaccountable to anybody, that violates Article 2 of the Constitution, and there's something called the Federal Vacancies Reform Act, which allows the president, who runs the executive branch, to appoint successors to people in federal agencies under the executive branch umbrella leaving. This thing was set up to be an independent agency, unaccountable or accountable to no one. Its very existence is unconstitutional. The left knows it. That's why they're hell-bent on keep Cordray named as Leanna English to succeed him. They want to keep this totally under Democrat liberal control so they can continue to use it to launder money and to be as a pass-through so that the money, and by the way, it's not the only organization doing this. Remember the scandal that was discovered, the Obama administration on many of the DOJ fines against culprits? That money was being sent to left-wing activist groups. It's no different, folks, in practice, from Obama's stimulus. Obama announces a stimulus of basically $800 billion, ostensibly to build roads and bridges. But that didn't happen, did it? Where'd the money go? The money went to unions. The money went to states and teachers and union members to keep them employed during the Great Recession. The reason for that is those people need to be employed in order to pay union dues. Union dues are collected from what they make and are sent in a circuitous route back to the Democrat Party in the form of campaign donations. So the stimulus was a substitute for Obama walking over to the Treasury and writing a check for $800 billion to the Democrat National Committee. Instead, you go through the motions of setting up this gigantic economic stimulus designed to fix roads and bridges and build schools, but you don't do that. You give the lion's share of the money to unions, which are then going to have a percentage of that money right back to the Democrat Party. Same thing here with this phony baloney agency. Have to take a break. Be back after this and continue. Don't go away. And lest you doubt me on this, the Obama-era Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has been a Democrat Party donor bank. The bureaucrats working at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau have written checks to liberals at a rate of $593 for every one Republican. Research of donor records maintained by the Center for Responsive Politics reveal that Hillary Clinton was the dominant recipient of tens of thousands of dollars from people who worked at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, followed by Obama, and third was Senator Elizabeth Warren, who had a role in collecting, in creating the agency. She's the number 3 recipient of donor funds. Overall, employees at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau have donated $115,000 to various Democrats and Democrat committees. That does not include the fines that the CPFB has incurred and levied against institutions, and that money is then given to left-wing activist groups. The whole thing is a sham, folks, under the guise of protecting consumers from evil corporations who want to ruin them. Welcome back, my friends. Rush Limbaugh, half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. We head back to the phones. Fraser Park, California. Mary Ann, great to have you here. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine, and I enjoy speaking to you. It's an honor. Anyways, I just love Trump, and I'm just your normal American citizen. But when he comes out with, like, Pocahontas, we love it. I mean, we understand what he's saying, why he's saying it, and it brings a smile on your face when you hear him talk like that, or because it's a certain humor that you have to understand, and we do. And we might be the silent people, but we are behind him 100%.
And you are not offended by that, right?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I even call her that myself. So, it's just, we understand what he's doing.
I do too. In fact, I wish you'd use the right word, actually. Pocahontas. F-A-U, Kahontas. Yeah. F-A-U-X.
She's the one that did something wrong, not him.
Right, exactly. She's the phony. Harvard, all of these law schools willing to accept 1/32nd Cherokee as evidence that they're not hiring white people. But I'll tell you, this is interesting, too, that the media gets all offended, and they think everybody is. And then they cover the story as though everybody's offended, that Trump is alone on this once again, isolated in humiliation and embarrassment. And they miss the boat on this with every such instance. I'm glad you called. I appreciate it, Marianne. Joel in Elkhorn, Wisconsin is next. Hello, sir.
Hello. It's a pleasure to speak with you. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just want to let you know I just thanked my dad on the 75th birthday by getting him a subscription to Rush 24/7.
Oh, wow.
As a thanks to him for raising me on you, so it's, again, an honor. I just actually am calling today about the Representative Gutierrez retirement story, and a skeptic I am. I thought about why he's retiring now, and I think the reason why is because the Democrat Party, the liberals, being the schemers that they are and the planners that they are, they're going to try to get rid of or have the people retire in Congress and the Senate that have been part of the settlement or the settlements for sexual harassment. And he's up for re-election in a year, and there's no reason for him to retire. He's an Illinois politician.
Well, you may have a point. This is quite. Let me give you the factual details here. Luis Gutierrez is a Democrat congressman from Illinois, and he's a firebrand. And he hates Trump. And he's one of the biggest pro-illegal immigration advocates in all of the U.S. Congress, and has been for a long time. There is no reason for this guy to be resigning Congress when they all think they're on the verge of retaking the House in 2018, because Luis Gutierrez would find himself elevated into a senior leadership position, because he checks off all the boxes that you have to check off on the Democrat card that makes you an approved commodity. He is for as much illegal immigration. He is for Colin Kaepernick and all these NFL protests. He is for every stinking left-wing, haywire, liberal idea there is times two. And he's very vocal about it. He's very public about it. And as such, he is at the top of the list of loyal and prominent Democrats in the media articulating the liberal Democrat position. And out of the blue, Luis Gutierrez, it says here in the Politico, a leading national voice on immigration reform. Ha! There's no reform in his idea. He just wants the borders open for anybody from anywhere to come into this country and then register as Democrats. Luis Gutierrez will not seek re-election, is expected to announce his decision today, according to 3 Democrat sources with knowledge of the decision. All of this reported in the Politico. Gutierrez is expected to announce that he's withdrawing his nominating petitions today. Now, you want to hear, he only filed his paperwork for re-election on Monday. So he files paperwork for re-election because there's a time limit, and then changes his mind. The sources say that former Chicago mayoral candidate Jesus Garcia will begin circulating petitions for Gutierrez's post. The spokesman for Gutierrez, Douglas Rivlin, said he couldn't comment. I don't know anything. I don't know anything, he said late yesterday. The news will create a frenzy for a seat Gutierrez has held since 1993. So why? I mean, for us, this is excellent news. But his reason for dropping out isn't mentioned anywhere. Not in this article, not in any other article. Now, you have to think that sexual harassment is taking another scalp. Wait, maybe I want to rephrase that. See, that could be racist, couldn't it? That could be insensitive, couldn't it? Gee, did I intend to say that or not? Trail of Lumps had nothing to do with the Indians. Trail of Lumps had everything to do with the feelings of the guys who struck out.